The sun had just started to rise over the sprawling mansion, its golden light touching the tall windows and reflecting off the polished floors. The mansion was enormous, a true mark of wealth, with long corridors, grand chandeliers, and rooms filled with priceless art. Despite all this grandeur, it was silent in the early morning, except for the soft sounds of a broom sweeping and water pouring into a teapot. She moved quietly through the halls, making sure everything was in order before the household woke up. She was small in stature, with a gentle presence that seemed almost invisible in such a massive home. Her uniform was simple, plain in color, but always neat. Her hands were busy, dusting furniture, arranging flowers, and making sure the floors shone. She had been working in the mansion for several years, and every corner of the house felt familiar to her. She knew where each rug should lie, how the curtains should fall, and even the exact number of steps it took to reach the grand piano in the lounge from the kitchen without making a sound. The mansion belonged to a wealthy man who was well known in business circles. He had everything he could ever want, from rare paintings to a collection of luxury cars. Yet despite his riches, he lived alone most of the time, relying on a small team of staff to keep his home running smoothly. She was one of the few people he trusted completely, although he had never truly noticed her beyond the work she did every day. To him, she was reliable, quiet, and efficient, the perfect help. To her, he was distant, but not unkind, and she had learned to navigate his moods and routines without ever drawing attention to herself. The day began as usual. She prepared breakfast for the staff and then started her morning cleaning, moving through the grand rooms with careful precision. The sunlight streaming through the tall windows created patterns on the marble floors, and she paused for a brief moment to admire them. She had always loved these quiet moments, when the house was still and it felt almost peaceful. Free from the pressure of any eyes watching her, her routine was simple, but it gave her a sense of purpose. She liked the order and rhythm of the set housework, the small achievements of cleaning and organizing that went unnoticed but kept the mansion functioning like clockwork. She knew every corner of the house and every item in it, from the grand dining hall with its polished silverware to the library filled with leather-bound books. She had a role in maintaining it all. The staff relied on her as much as she relied on the routines that gave her life a quiet structure. Today, however, there was a slight shift in the usual rhythm. The Millionaire was hosting a small gathering of friends in the evening. Though they were not expecting a formal event, the house needed to be spotless, and everything had to be perfect. She moved with purpose, dusting each surface meticulously, arranging the cushions just so, and ensuring that the flowers were fresh and symmetrical. She was aware that these preparations were more important than usual because the guests would notice if something erased was out of place. She paused by the grand piano in the lounge. It was an impressive instrument, gleaming under the sunlight, with ivory keys that seemed to invite someone to play them. She had always admired it from afar, but she had never touched it. It was not part of her duties, and she had no reason to play. Yet, she often found herself lingering near it, imagining melodies and harmonies in her mind. Music had always been a quiet companion in her life, a secret she kept to herself. She hummed softly while dusting the piano, her fingers moving across the keys briefly, just to feel their smooth surface. The sound was faint. It reminded her of something she loved deeply, but had no chance to pursue. As the morning progressed, the house slowly came to life. The other staff arrived, and the kitchen buzzed with activity. She helped with breakfast, checked the pantry, and ensured that the dining table was ready for the early meals. Despite the activity, she moved through it all with a calm efficiency, never seeking attention or praise. Her satisfaction came from knowing the house was orderly and everything was running smoothly. The Millionaire appeared briefly in the morning, walking through the lounge to check on the staff. He was dressed in a crisp suit, his presence commanding, but not unkind. He nodded at her as he passed, a small gesture of acknowledgement that she quietly appreciated. Though he rarely spoke directly to her beyond instructions, she sensed that he recognized her diligence. Yet it was a distant recognition, more of her reliability than any personal interest. She continued her work, polishing the silverware and arranging the living room furniture in perfect symmetry. Every detail mattered to her, from the alignment of the chairs to the exact fold of the napkins. Her attention to detail was something she took pride in, even if no one else noticed. The house had become her world, a place where she could exercise her skills and maintain control over something tangible, even if her own life outside these walls was modest and limited. Around noon, she took a brief break. Sitting by the window, she watched the garden, the flowers swaying gently in the breeze. She often found solace in these moments, a quiet reflection amidst the demands of her work. She thought about her life, the choices that had brought her here, and the dreams she had quietly set aside. Music, in particular, lingered in her mind. She had once played piano regularly, but circumstances had prevented her from pursuing it further. Still, the melodies remained alive in her memory, a private treasure she kept close. The afternoon was spent preparing for the evening gathering. She coordinated with the other staff, ensuring the drinks were chilled, the flowers arranged, and the rooms ready for guests. She moved with a sense of purpose, her mind focused on each task. Though she was busy, there was a subtle excitement in the air. The evening promised something different, a break from the routine, and she could feel the energy building in the mansion. As she finished arranging the lounge, she glanced at the grand piano again. Its polished surface gleamed under the afternoon light, and she felt an inexplicable pull toward it. She imagined the sound of the keys beneath her fingers, the music flowing freely as it had once done. She shook her head slightly, reminding herself that this was not her place. She was the maid, not a performer, yet a small smile crossed her face as she imagined the joy of playing again, even if only in secret. By late afternoon, the mansion was ready. Staff had completed their preparations, and everything was in its place. She took a moment to walk through the rooms, ensuring that nothing was out of order. The sense of accomplishment was quiet but satisfying. The mansion was immaculate, and she had played her part perfectly. Yet deep down, she felt a flutter of anticipation for the evening, sensing that something unexpected might happen. Even if she could not yet know what it would be, the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the polished floors. She moved through the mansion, checking lights, arranging cushions, and making sure every detail was perfect. The soft glow of the chandeliers reflected off the walls, creating a warm, inviting atmosphere. She felt a mixture of pride and nervousness, aware that the guests would arrive soon and the mansion would be filled with conversation and laughter. She paused once more by the piano, her fingers brushing the keys lightly. The sound was soft and delicate, a whisper of what could be. She felt a connection to the instrument, a silent understanding that this piano held something special for her. It was more than a piece of furniture. It was a portal to a part of her life she had long kept hidden. She smiled faintly, feeling a sense of calm wash over her amidst the anticipation of the evening. The first guests arrived, and the mansion slowly filled with voices and laughter. She moved quietly among them, serving drinks and attending to small needs, her presence almost invisible. The guests were focused on the grandeur of the house and the hospitality of the staff. Unaware of the quiet figure who had meticulously prepared everything, she moved with grace and efficiency, her eyes and mind always alert, ready to respond to any request. Through it all, she kept returning, even briefly, to the piano. It called to her with a quiet insistence, a reminder of a hidden talent in a world beyond her daily tasks. She imagined playing for the guests, filling the room with music, but quickly dismissed the thought. She was a maid, and the piano belonged to the millionaire. Yet the idea lingered, a small spark of possibility that quietly stirred within her. As the evening began in earnest, she continued her duties, her movements seamless and practiced. The mansion was alive with conversation, laughter, and the clinking of glasses, yet she remained focused, a silent guardian of the order she had created. Her heart beat with a mixture of nervousness and excitement, unaware that this evening might bring a moment that would change everything she thought about herself and her place in the world. The evening air was filled with laughter and the soft clinking of glasses. The mansion was alive with light and sound, a stark contrast to the quiet morning that had passed. Guests had arrived and the rooms were buzzing with conversation. She moved quietly through the lounge, serving drinks and ensuring that everything ran smoothly, her presence barely noticeable amidst the lively chatter. The millionaire, tall and commanding, stood near the grand piano, talking with his friends about business and travel. He had a sense of humor that often caught people off guard, and tonight he seemed in particularly high spirits. His eyes scanned the room, noting the elegant arrangements, the polished furniture, and the immaculate floors. Then, almost casually, he looked at her as she passed by and said, "Why don't you play something for us?" "Just for fun?" The words hung in the air. She paused, caught off guard. All eyes seemed to turn toward her, and for the first time that evening, she felt a strange awareness of her own presence. She was a maid, expected to serve and stay in the background, not perform or entertain. The suggestion was light, almost playful, but it carried an unexpected weight. She hesitated, unsure how to respond. Her hands, which had been holding a tray of drinks, trembled slightly. She glanced at the piano, its polished surface gleaming under the chandelier lights. Her heart began to race. The idea of playing in front of so many people, of revealing something she had kept private for so long, filled her with both fear and excitement. The millionaire noticed her hesitation and gave a reassuring nod. "Come on, it will be fun. No pressure. Just play something you like." She took a deep breath and nodded, setting the tray down carefully. Her steps toward the piano were slow and deliberate, each movement filled with a mixture of nerves and anticipation. The room seemed to fall into a quieter rhythm as she approached the instrument, as if even the guests were sensing that something unexpected was about to happen. She stood before the piano, her fingers hovering over the keys. The ivory gleamed under the lights, smooth and inviting. She closed her eyes briefly, remembering the hours she had spent practicing in her youth, the melodies that had once filled her small, quiet room, and the sense of peace that music had always brought her. For a moment, she allowed herself to remember the joy of playing. The way her fingers could tell a story without words. Her first notes were soft, almost hesitant, barely filling the room. But as she continued, her confidence grew. The music began to flow more naturally, each note carefully placed, yet full of feeling. The room seemed to change around her. The chatter faded, the laughter quieted, and all attention turned toward the sound of the piano. The millionaire watched in amazement, his earlier amusement replaced by genuine astonishment. He had expected a simple, casual tune, perhaps a few notes, to amuse the guests. Instead, he was witnessing something extraordinary. Her hands moved gracefully across the keys, producing a melody that was both complex and beautiful, full of emotion and depth. The guests, too, were captivated. Some leaned forward in their seats, eyes wide with surprise. Others whispered to one another, unsure if they had ever heard anything so moving. The music seemed to tell a story, speaking to something deep within each listener. It was as if the piano itself had been waiting for this moment. She was the one chosen to awaken its voice. Her fingers danced across the keys, moving with a natural ease that betrayed years of hidden talent. The melodies flowed effortlessly, each note resonating with clarity and emotion. She did not play to impress. She played because the music was a part of her, a language she had always understood. The room was filled with a sense of wonder, a shared moment of beauty that transcended social status and expectation. As she continued, the millionaire felt a mix of emotions he had not anticipated. Pride, awe, and disbelief mingled together. How had he never known that this quiet, unassuming woman had such extraordinary talent? He glanced around the room, seeing the guests' reactions mirrored in his own. Everyone was spellbound, caught in the magic of the music, and he realized that this was more than just entertainment. It was a revelation. She lost herself in the music, her eyes closing as she played. Each chord and melody carried a piece of her soul, a reflection of her life, her dreams, and her hidden talents. She remembered the hours she had spent practicing in secret, the times she had longed to share her music with the world, and the quiet determination that had kept her going. Tonight, for the first time, all of that was visible, audible, and undeniable. The performance grew in intensity, building from gentle, flowing passages to powerful, soaring sections that filled the entire lounge. The guests were silent, their eyes fixed on her hands as they moved with precision and grace. Some held their breath, caught in the spell of the music, while others felt tears prick at the corners of their eyes. It was impossible not to be moved. The millionaire could hardly believe what he was witnessing. He had seen talent before, but never like this. The combination of skill, emotion, and authenticity was something rare, something that left a lasting impression. He found himself leaning forward, captivated by the music, feeling a deep respect and admiration for the maid who had, until now, existed in the background of his life. As the final notes resonated through the room, there was a brief moment of silence. The music lingered, echoing in the minds of everyone present. Then, slowly, the room erupted into applause. It was not the polite clapping of a social gathering. It was genuine, heartfelt, and enthusiastic. Guests rose to their feet, some cheering, others wiping away tears, all moved by the unexpected brilliance they had just witnessed. She opened her eyes, blinking in surprise at the response. Her hands trembled slightly as she moved away from the keys. The room had changed in an instant, the atmosphere charged with excitement and admiration. She felt a mixture of embarrassment, pride, and disbelief. Unsure how to respond to the overwhelming attention, the millionaire approached her, his eyes wide with amazement. "That was incredible," he said, his voice filled with genuine admiration. "I had no idea you could play like that. Where did you learn? How long have you been keeping this a secret?" She smiled shyly, her cheeks flushing. I learned when I was young," she said softly. "I had lessons, but I never had the chance to continue. I just love playing." He nodded, still stunned. "Well, you are amazing. Truly amazing that was. Unforgettable. Everyone is talking about it. You've left us all in shock." The guests continued to express their amazement, some coming forward to compliment her directly. They asked about her background, her experience, and whether she had ever considered performing professionally. She responded humbly, explaining that she had played in private for years, but had never imagined that anyone beyond her family or teachers would hear her. The millionaire listened. He had always believed in recognizing talent, but he had never expected to find such extraordinary skill in someone who had worked quietly in his household for years. He felt a deep sense of respect and a desire to support her, to help her realize a potential he had only just discovered. As the evening continued, she returned to her duties, but now with a new sense of confidence. The guests were eager to talk with her, to learn more about her, and to hear even a few more notes from the piano. She felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of pride and excitement, knowing that her secret talent was no longer hidden. The mansion, once a place of routine and quiet labor, now seemed alive with possibility. She moved through the rooms with a sense of purpose, aware of the impact she had made, and feeling the beginnings of a change that could alter her life in ways she had never imagined. The piano had revealed a part of her that had long been silent, and in doing so, it had transformed the evening and, perhaps, her future forever. Even as the night drew on and the guests began to leave, she could not stop thinking about the music, about the way it had moved people, and about the unexpected joy she had felt in sharing it. She had stepped out of the background for a brief moment, and in doing so, had discovered a new sense of self. A glimpse of a world where her talent was recognized and celebrated. The millionaire, still in awe, spoke to her privately after the guests had gone. "I want you to know that what you did tonight, it was extraordinary. I would like to help you in any way I can. You have a gift, and it deserves to be shared." She felt a mixture of disbelief and hope. She had never imagined that her music could matter to anyone outside of herself. Now here was someone offering not just recognition, but opportunity. It was overwhelming, and yet exhilarating. She nodded, words failing her, feeling a spark of possibility ignite within her. As she finally left the lounge to return to her quarters, she glanced back at the piano. It had been the silent companion of her life, and tonight it had given her a voice. The mansion, the guests, and even the millionaire had witnessed a part of her that had long remained hidden. She smiled to herself, a quiet but profound sense of fulfillment washing over her. For the first time in many years, she felt seen not just as a maid, but as a musician. As a person with a story to tell through her music, the notes of the piano filled the lounge, echoing off the high ceilings and golden walls. She played with a delicate touch at first, allowing the music to flow softly, almost like a gentle conversation with the room. Every key she pressed seemed to carry a piece of her history, a fragment of emotions long held within her heart. The guests had grown quiet, their attention entirely focused on the young woman who moved so gracefully at the piano. Her fingers moved almost effortlessly, dancing across the keys, shifting from soft, tender melodies to more powerful and dramatic chords. She didn't notice the surprise in the eyes of those watching. She only noticed the music itself, how it made her feel, how it allowed her to express herself in ways words never could. The millionaire,
Standing near the edge of the crowd,
felt a lump form in his throat. He had seen countless performances in his life, but nothing like this. There was no pretense in her music, no hint of arrogance, only honesty, depth, and raw beauty. Each note seemed to reveal a layer of her soul that had always been hidden beneath her quiet exterior. He could not believe that someone who had seemed so ordinary that he had barely noticed her beyond her work, could hold such brilliance within her. Guests exchanged glances, whispering to each other in disbelief. Some could hardly breathe, afraid to break the spell. Their eyes followed every movement of her hands, watching as her fingers glided across the keys with precision, passion, and an almost magical ease. There was a rhythm in her performance that seemed to tell a story, a narrative woven through melodies and chords. They were no longer merely listening. They were experiencing a moment caught up in a river of sound that carried them beyond the walls of the mansion. The maid herself was unaware of how captivated the room had become. She was lost in the music, feeling it rise and fall like waves. The piano allowed her to forget the roles she was supposed to play, the expectations that had always bound her. In this moment, she was no longer a maid. She was a storyteller, a musician, a force of emotion. Her past, her dreams, and her hidden desires poured out with each press of the keys, creating a tapestry of sound that enveloped the entire space. The melody shifted again, becoming more lively and vibrant. Her fingers moved faster, producing a cascade of notes that sparkled in the warm glow of the chandeliers. It was not just skill that impressed those watching. It was the depth of feeling in every note, the honesty of her expression, and the way the music seemed to breathe with her emotions. There was a tension and release in her playing that made it impossible for anyone to look away. The millionaire found himself leaning closer, almost afraid to blink. He had seen the transformation in her, from the quiet, almost invisible maid to a woman whose talent commanded the room. It was as though she had become a different person entirely, a revelation in human form. The awe he felt was accompanied by a growing curiosity about her life, her past, and how she had acquired such talent. Some guests were visibly moved, their eyes glistening with tears. They whispered to one another about the unexpected gift they had been given that evening, how a simple request had unveiled a hidden brilliance. None of them had anticipated such beauty from someone they had dismissed as part of the household staff. Her performance challenged their assumptions, forcing them to reconsider the quiet people around them and the unseen potential that might lie within anyone. She continued to play, her body swaying slightly with the rhythm, her face a picture of concentration and calm determination. She did not play for applause or recognition. She played because she could not do otherwise. The music was a part of her, inseparable from her being, and tonight it had a voice that could no longer be contained. Each chord, each note, carried memories of her life, moments of joy, moments of hardship, and all the quiet hope she had nurtured over the years. The melody grew even more intense, moving through dynamic highs and soft, reflective lows. The lounge, once filled with casual conversation and laughter, had become a sanctuary of sound. Everyone present was united by the music, experiencing an unspoken connection that transcended their different social statuses. The room was no longer a mansion filled with guests and servants. It was a world where music reigned, and she was its queen. Her hands moved with extraordinary precision. Yet there was a freedom in her performance, a sense that she was not confined by technique or expectation. She was free, letting the music take her wherever it wanted to go. Her heart pounded, but not from fear. It was exhilaration, the kind that comes from doing something that feels both terrifying and utterly natural at the same time. The millionaire could not take his eyes off her. He had always appreciated art and talent, but this was something beyond any description he had ever heard. He felt pride, not in himself, but in the recognition of talent that had been hidden before his eyes. He realized how easy it had been to overlook brilliance when it came in an unexpected form, from someone who did not fit the usual expectations of grandeur or showmanship. As the music reached its climax, the maid's hands flew across the keys with incredible skill. The notes shimmered and cascaded like sunlight on water, filling the room with a brilliance that was almost overwhelming. Guests leaned forward, completely entranced, some holding their hands to their hearts, unable to believe what they were hearing. It was a moment of pure magic, a performance that would be remembered long after the evening had ended. She did not notice the reactions around her. All that mattered was the music, the story she was telling through the piano. Her mind was focused entirely on the sound, the emotion, and the connection between herself and the instrument. She allowed herself to express everything she had held inside, every unspoken thought and every hidden dream. As the final notes faded, the lounge was silent for a heartbeat, as if the room itself were holding its breath. Then, slowly, the applause began. It started as a soft murmur and grew into a roar of admiration. The guests rose to their feet, cheering and clapping, unable to contain their astonishment. Some wiped tears from their eyes, overwhelmed by the unexpected beauty they had witnessed. The millionaire approached her, his eyes wide with disbelief and awe. "That was beyond words," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I've never heard anything like it in my life. Where did this come from? How have I never known?" She smiled faintly, her hands still resting on the keys, feeling a mixture of embarrassment and pride. I have always loved music," she said softly. "I learned when I was young, but I never had the chance to continue. I just play because it makes me happy." He nodded, unable to hide his admiration. "Happiness? No, this is more than that. This is genius. You have a gift, and it deserves to be seen, heard, and celebrated." "I can't believe I've been blind to it all these years." Guests continued to approach, expressing their amazement and curiosity. Some asked her if she had considered performing professionally, if she had trained formally, or if she had ever played in public before. She answered modestly, explaining that she had always played in private, enjoying music as a personal escape and a form of expression. The room was buzzing, not with conversation, but with the echo of what had just happened. The performance had created a shared experience, a moment of genuine connection and wonder that no one would soon forget. The millionaire felt a deep sense of responsibility, a desire to support and encourage the talent he had uncovered. He realized that the maid, who had been part of his household for years, had lived a life of quiet restraint, hiding an extraordinary ability that could change her life if given the chance. She moved away from the piano, feeling both relieved and exhilarated. The music had ended, but its effects lingered in the air, a tangible sense of awe and admiration. She felt a new sense of confidence, a quiet recognition that she had touched the hearts of those around her. For the first time, she felt visible, appreciated, and understood not just as a maid, but as a musician and a person of remarkable talent. The millionaire spoke to her privately as the guests mingled, his words filled with sincerity and encouragement. "What you played tonight? It was extraordinary. I want to help you, to give you the chance to share your gift with the world. You have a talent that should not remain hidden." She felt a mixture of disbelief, gratitude, and hope. She had never imagined that her music could matter beyond herself. Yet here was someone offering recognition and opportunity. It was overwhelming, but it also sparked a sense of possibility she had long buried. The night continued, but the memory of the performance hung in the air like a beautiful secret that had been shared. Guests continued to discuss it in hushed tones, amazed that such brilliance could come from someone they had never thought of beyond her work in the mansion. She continued her duties, but now with a quiet pride, aware that she had crossed a threshold, revealing a part of herself that had always been waiting for the right moment. As the last guests departed and the mansion returned to its quiet state. She lingered by the piano. The instrument had been her silent companion for years, and tonight it had allowed her to speak in a way she never could with words. She placed her hands gently on the keys, feeling the lingering warmth of the music she had created. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen, heard, and valued for who she truly was. The millionaire watched from a distance, a mixture of admiration and awe on his face. He had discovered something remarkable, a hidden world of talent that had been present in his own home all along. He felt inspired to support her, to ensure that her gift was nurtured and celebrated. And he knew without a doubt that her life and perhaps the lives of many others would never be the same again. The night after her performance was filled with a quiet energy in the mansion. The guests had left, but the memory of the music lingered in every room. Even the millionaire moved through the halls differently, his mind replaying every note, every movement of her hands across the piano keys. The usual routine of the house seemed changed somehow. As if her music had left an invisible mark on the atmosphere itself, she moved through the mansion with her usual grace, attending to her duties, yet she felt a subtle shift in how she carried herself. The applause, the astonished looks, and the heartfelt compliments were still echoing in her mind. She had never experienced anything like it before. The validation, the acknowledgement was not something she sought, yet it had awakened something within her, a sense of possibility she had long buried. The millionaire called her into the lounge before the household settled into the quiet of the night. He was still dressed in the same suit, though slightly loosened after the evening's festivities, and there was an intensity in his eyes she had never seen before. He gestured toward the piano, and she stepped forward, her heart beating rapidly. "I want to understand everything," he said. "Tell me about your experience, your training, and what led you to this moment. I cannot believe I have lived in the same house as you all these years without knowing." She hesitated for a moment, unsure how to begin. Her life had been quiet, ordinary in the eyes of others, yet music had always been a private refuge. "I started learning when I was very young," she said softly. "I had lessons for several years, but after a while, life became busy, and I had to stop. I never played in front of anyone outside my family and teachers. I kept it as something personal, something that made me happy." The millionaire listened intently, his expression a mix of fascination and respect. "Happiness. No, this is more than happiness. This is a gift that deserves to be shared. Your talent is extraordinary. I have seen professional musicians, and your skill surpasses what many of them can do. I cannot ignore this." She looked at him, feeling a combination of humility and disbelief. She had never imagined that her music could elicit such reactions, especially from someone she had thought of as merely her employer. The idea that he saw her talent as extraordinary and worth sharing was both overwhelming and exhilarating. He continued, "I want to offer you opportunities. There are people I know in the music world who would be amazed to hear you. This should not remain hidden any longer. You deserve recognition for what you can do." Her eyes widened, and a faint smile crossed her face. I never expected anything like that," she admitted. "I just play because I love it. I never thought it would matter to anyone else." "It matters," he said firmly. "It matters a great deal, and I want to help you make it matter to others too." Over the next few days, the mansion was filled with a different kind of energy. She carried out her duties as before, but the awareness of her talent and the millionaire's encouragement made her move with a new confidence. She found herself lingering by the piano more often, practicing quietly, exploring melodies that had lived in her mind for years, but had never found their way to the keys. The millionaire took a personal interest in her music. He would often find her by the piano, observing silently, occasionally offering encouragement or suggestions. He never imposed, only supported, allowing her to express herself freely. His presence was not intimidating, but inspiring, and she found herself growing more confident with each passing day. One afternoon, he invited a small group of close friends to hear her play again, this time in a more structured setting. It was not a formal performance, but he wanted them to witness her skill and share in the wonder of discovering hidden talent. She felt nervous at first, unsure if she was ready to perform again. But the thought of sharing her music with people who genuinely appreciated it pushed her forward. As she sat at the piano and began to play, the room fell silent. The melodies that emerged were richer and more confident than before, filled with emotion and subtle complexity. Her fingers moved with precision, yet there was a freedom in her playing that made each note feel alive. The guests were captivated once more, some leaning forward, some closing their eyes. Completely absorbed in the experience, the millionaire watched with pride, feeling a deep satisfaction in seeing her talent recognized. He had always known that she was exceptional in her diligence and care, but this revealed a different dimension entirely. He realized that talent, when nurtured and encouraged, could bloom in unexpected ways, transforming lives and inspiring those around it. After the impromptu performance, he approached her again. "You have such a natural ability," he said. "I want to help you explore it fully. There are teachers, mentors, and opportunities waiting for someone like you. This is your chance to take a step beyond what you have known." She felt a wave of emotion, a mixture of gratitude, fear, and excitement. For so long, she had lived within the boundaries of her work and her modest life, content with what little recognition she received. Now, a path had opened that could lead her to a world she had only dreamed of. She nodded slowly, realizing that this could be the beginning of something truly transformative. The days that followed were filled with planning and preparation. The millionaire connected her with musicians, instructors, and advisors who could guide her in developing her talent further. He encouraged her to think beyond the mansion, beyond the life she had known, and to imagine the possibilities that lay ahead. Each conversation, each suggestion, was met with her quiet determination and eagerness to learn. She continued to practice diligently, discovering new techniques and refining her skills. The piano, once a silent companion, had become a gateway to a future she had never dared to imagine. Her music grew more expressive, more intricate, and more compelling, reflecting both her technical skill and the depth of her emotions. The staff in the mansion began to notice a subtle change in her demeanor. She moved with greater confidence and purpose, her quiet strength now complemented by a sense of excitement and possibility. The atmosphere in the house itself seemed to shift, as if her music had infused it with energy and inspiration. The millionaire observed these changes with satisfaction. He had always valued diligence and competence in his staff, but this revealed something deeper: the importance of recognizing hidden talents and encouraging growth. He felt a profound sense of responsibility and pride in supporting her journey, knowing that his encouragement could make a lasting difference. One evening, as the sun set and the mansion glowed in warm light, she played for him alone. The music was tender, introspective, and full of emotion. It told stories of her past, her hopes, and her dreams. She allowed herself to be vulnerable, to express feelings she had long kept hidden. The millionaire listened quietly, moved by the depth of her expression and the honesty of her playing. "You are extraordinary," he said softly when she finished. "Not just in talent, but in heart. Your music carries a part of you that is rare and precious. Never let it be hidden again." She felt a mixture of relief and gratitude. For so long, she had wondered if her passion for music mattered, if it was worth pursuing beyond the quiet of her own life. Now, she realized that it did, and that it had the power to touch others in ways she had never imagined. In the weeks that followed, she began to explore opportunities outside the mansion. She took lessons, participated in small performances, and connected with other musicians who recognized her extraordinary talent. Each step was both exhilarating and challenging, but she embraced it with determination and grace. The support of the millionaire and the belief he had shown in her gave her the courage to move forward, to imagine a future that had once seemed impossible. Her life was changing in ways she could never have anticipated. The mansion, the routine, and the quiet existence she had known were now intertwined with a new journey, one filled with creativity, recognition, and growth. She continued her duties, of course, but they no longer defined her entirely. The music had become her voice, her identity, and her bridge to a world beyond the walls of the mansion. The millionaire continued to watch her progress with admiration. Proud of the transformation he had witnessed, he had discovered a hidden gem in his own home, and supporting her growth had become a mission of both respect and delight. He saw her potential not just as a musician, but as an example of how talent, when nurtured, could flourish in even the most unexpected places. As the months passed, her confidence and skill grew. She performed for select audiences, sharing her music with people who appreciated it deeply. Each performance reinforced her belief in herself and her abilities. She realized that her life was no longer confined to the quiet service of the mansion, but had expanded to include a world of possibilities she had only dreamed about. Yet, through it all, she remained humble and grounded. Her music was not about fame or recognition. It was about connection, expression, and the joy of sharing a part of herself with others. She understood the value of her roots, the importance of hard work, and the lessons learned in quiet service. Her journey had only begun, but she had discovered that even the most hidden talents, when given the right encouragement, could shine brilliantly and change lives. Months passed, and her life had transformed in ways she had never imagined. The once quiet and routine existence within the mansion had expanded into a world full of music, opportunities, and possibilities. She had been introduced to new teachers, mentors, and performers who guided her with care and admiration. Each lesson brought her closer to refining her skill. In each practice session, strengthened her confidence and deepened her connection with the piano. The mansion still remained her home. But it was no longer simply a workplace. It had become a place of inspiration, where music and creativity flourished alongside her daily duties. The Millionaire continued to support her, attending her performances, arranging opportunities, offering encouragement. He had become more than an employer. He had become a mentor and a true admirer of her talent. She had begun performing for select audiences, small gatherings of music lovers who were moved by her performances. Each event reinforced her understanding that music was not just a personal joy, but a gift meant to be shared. She realized that the melodies she created could touch hearts, evoke emotions, and create connections that transcended social boundaries. Every applause, every compliment, every tearful reaction reminded her of the power of her talent and the importance of nurturing it. Her schedule was demanding, but fulfilling. Mornings were still spent attending to the mansion and her duties, but afternoons and evenings were dedicated to practice, lessons, and performances. She found herself more disciplined and organized, her life carefully balanced between responsibility and passion. Yet, despite the busyness, there was a calm joy that had not existed before, deep satisfaction in pursuing what she loved and in seeing it appreciated by others. The Millionaire often observed her quietly, sometimes from the doorway of the lounge, sometimes from the edge of the audience during her small recitals. He watched as she moved with elegance and purpose, her fingers gliding over the keys with skill and emotion. He admired not only her talent, but also her humility and dedication. She had remained grounded despite the attention and praise, and he felt proud to have played a role in helping her realize her potential. One day, he approached her with news that made her heart skip a beat. He had arranged for her to perform in a renowned music hall in the city, a place where talented musicians showcased their skill before discerning audiences. It was a chance to step beyond the mansion, beyond the small gatherings, and share her music with a wider world. She felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The thought of performing in front of so many strangers was daunting, yet exhilarating. She had come a long way from the quiet maid who had once hesitated at the piano, unsure of her own ability. Now, she was ready to embrace the opportunity, to step into a world that had once seemed distant and unreachable. The days leading up to the performance were filled with intense practice. She refined her repertoire, experimented with new melodies, and focused on expressing the depth of her emotions through the piano. Every note, every chord was carefully considered, yet she allowed herself the freedom to feel and to improvise. She wanted her performance to be authentic, a reflection of her journey and her passion. On the day of the performance, the mansion was alive with anticipation. The Millionaire ensured that everything was arranged perfectly. From transportation to the hall to the preparation of her music sheets, he offered quiet words of encouragement, reminding her that her talent was extraordinary and that she had nothing to fear. She nodded, feeling a surge of confidence and determination. As she entered the music hall, the atmosphere was unlike anything she had experienced. The seats stretched far into the distance, filled with people whose eyes were filled with curiosity and anticipation. The stage lights shone brightly, illuminating the grand piano at the center. She took a deep breath, feeling the energy of the space, and sat at the piano with a mixture of reverence and excitement. When her fingers touched the keys, hush fell over the audience. The first notes were soft, delicate, and captivating. She allowed the music to flow naturally, drawing from her heart and her experiences. The melodies told a story, a journey of a life once constrained by quiet routine and now blossoming with passion and recognition. The audience was spellbound, caught in the magic of her performance. Her playing grew more confident, more expressive. She moved seamlessly through complex passages, her hands flying across the keys with precision and grace. Every note resonated with emotion, and the audience felt the depth of her talent and her authenticity. It was not just technical skill that impressed them, the honesty and feeling that infused each melody. Backstage, the millionaire watched with pride and awe. He had known her potential, but seeing it unfold on such a stage was breathtaking. He understood that this moment was a turning point, a culmination of years of hidden talent, opportunity, and encouragement. He knew that her journey was far from over, yet he felt certain that she would continue to grow and inspire others with her music. As the performance reached its climax, the audience was completely captivated. Some closed their eyes, allowing the music to wash over them. Others leaned forward, unable to look away from her hands as they moved effortlessly across the keys. The music created a shared emotional experience, a connection between performer and listener that transcended words. When the final notes faded, there was a moment of stunned silence, followed by a wave of applause that filled the hall. The audience rose to their feet, cheering and clapping, some visibly moved to tears. She sat at the piano, her heart racing, feeling a mixture of relief, pride, and exhilaration. For the first time, she realized the full impact of her music. The way it could touch the hearts of strangers and create lasting impressions. The millionaire approached her as she stood, his eyes shining with admiration. "You were incredible," he said. "Everyone will remember this performance. You have a gift that goes beyond skill, it moves people." "I am so proud of you," she smiled, overwhelmed by the recognition and support. "Thank you," she said softly. "I never imagined it could feel like this, sharing music and having it touch others." In the following weeks, her life continued to evolve. She received invitations to perform in other venues, connect with well-known musicians, and explore opportunities she had never dreamed possible. Each new experience brought growth, learning, and a deeper understanding of her own potential. She remained humble and grounded, remembering the journey that had brought her here, the quiet mornings in the mansion, the private practice sessions, and the encouragement that had opened the door to her talent. Her relationship with the millionaire deepened, built on mutual respect and admiration. He continued to support her endeavors, offering guidance, resources, and encouragement, and always allowing her to chart her own course. She appreciated his support, not just for the opportunities it provided, but for the genuine belief he had shown in her abilities and her potential. Over time, she became more than a musician. She became an inspiration. People admired not only her skill, but her humility, her dedication, and her journey from a quiet maid to a celebrated performer. She encouraged others to pursue their passions, to recognize the hidden talents within themselves, and to understand that opportunity could appear in the most unexpected ways. The mansion remained a central part of her life, but it was no longer simply a place of work. It was a foundation, a reminder of where she had started and the quiet strength that had carried her forward. She continued her daily routines, tending to the home and caring for those within it. But she now balanced this with her passion for music and her growing career. Her music became a bridge between her past and her future, connecting the quiet, disciplined life she had known with a world of creativity, recognition, and opportunity. She understood that talent alone was not enough. It required courage, practice, and the willingness to step beyond comfort and routine. She had taken that step, and it had changed her life irrevocably. As she looked back on the journey, she realized that the simple, playful request to play the piano had been the catalyst for everything. A moment of courage, a willingness to share her hidden talent, had opened doors she'd never imagined. Her life had transformed from quiet service to a world filled with music, recognition, and meaningful connections. She continued to play. Not for fame or fortune, but for the joy of expression, the thrill of sharing beauty with others, and the fulfillment of a long-held dream. Her journey was ongoing, with new challenges, opportunities, and experiences ahead. But she faced them with confidence, passion, and a deep understanding of her own worth.